So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about rehab and what to expect in the first 6 weeks after a total hip replacement. So I call those phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 for me is the first 7 to 14 days. So the first 1 to 2 weeks after you go home from the surgery center or the hospital. You've just had a hip replacement. You're going to have a bandage on. The goal for the first 1 to 2 weeks is to control the swelling and inflammation and just gently and slowly ambulate, learn to walk without a limp, and get back to doing your activities of daily living. The key there is understanding that there's a fine balance between walking or doing too much and doing too little. So on one hand of the equation, we give you blood thinners and calf compressors and stockings, and we do that to prevent blood clots forming in your legs. So we don't want you to go home and sit around on the couch like a slug and do nothing. But the opposite end of the scale is I don't want you going home and run up and down the stairs 10 times a day or walk 5 miles in the first 2 weeks. Because if you do that, you're definitely going to stir up a bunch of bruising and swelling and bleeding, and you'll have more pain, and you'll end up taking 1 step forward and 3 steps back. So everything is about listening to your body and doing things in moderation in the first 2 weeks. Walking around your house, short walks around the house, ice your hip frequently, wear the compressive shorts, and just not overdo it. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is effectively the next 4 weeks. So you'll typically come in and see us in the office around 2 weeks, or for out-of-state or out-of-country patients, you'll review things with us over the phone or video with conversations with us at the 2-week mark. And once we know everything's going well at that 2-week mark, we'll sort of enter phase 2 of the rehab. Now for hips in particular, there is a set of muscles that lie at the front of your hip joint. They're your hip flexors, specifically your iliopsoas and your rectus femoris tendons. Now, those are 2 big muscles that run at the front of your hip joint. And if you think about it, I went right beside those muscles when I went into your hip joint. And now you've probably spent a fair bit of time sitting at home on the couch or in a chair while you're icing your hip and rehabbing. Well, what happens after surgery where there's inflammation is scar tissue starts to form. The inflammation that's created and the extra blood that was in there starts to scar down those tissues. So if you're sitting, those structures are short. So what happens, you go to get up and walk and do a normal stride, and surprise, surprise, it stretches and it hurts a little bit in your hip flexors. So after 2 weeks, or maybe even sooner, we may tell you to start these gentle exercises. There's an illustration of the exercises in our booklet, and there will be an illustration online. But there are specific stretches that you can gently do, safe and effectively, 3 or 4 times a day, where you literally just gently stretch out those 2 hip flexors to prevent them from forming adhesions with the scar tissue at the front of your hip. And I think that's a big thing, and that's helped a lot of people with the early rehab in phase 2 after these total hips. And then really it's just a matter of some gentle stationary biking, gentle exercises, no heavy lifting, no jumping, no lifting heavy objects, doing your stretches and continuing with your icing and stretching intermittently for that next 4 weeks. By the 6 or 8 week mark, when you come in to see us for an x-ray, your muscles should be feeling good. You should be walking with a smooth, symmetric gait, and you'll be chomping at the bit to go back to the activities that you've given up for so many years. Once we see that x-ray and know the x-ray looks good and everything checks out okay, we'll probably give you the green light to go back and do whatever you want. Get into the gym, hike, bike, ski, play tennis, go golfing, whatever you'd like to do. So I hope that helps. Phase 1, phase 2 rehab. Slow and steady wins the race. You cannot accelerate biology. Remember, those implants that we hammer into the bone take 6 weeks to grow into the skeleton, and you can't rush that. We need to take our time for the first 6 weeks. I hope this helps.